Hey there, my name is Alexis, and I'm going to show you how I made this 5-foot long skate box, as well as this 8-foot long manual pad that can be taken apart easily, as well as be stored away all within the skate box, so that it takes up very little space and can be transported easily. I'm going to show you all the tools and materials that you're going to need to make this build, as well as some tips along the way. I do want to apologize in advance since there will be some vertical footage from my phone in this video. So this is my current box. It's a good size, 5 feet long, 3 feet wide, and about 15 inches tall. It's sturdy, but it's heavy as hell, and it could be a pain to load it in and out of the car sometimes. So I'm gonna reuse the top of the box as well as the inside 2x4s, and I'm gonna rebuild the sides out of plywood. So the tools you're gonna need are a drill, a circular saw, some clamps, a straight edge or something equivalent, and a rafter square to help cut the 2x4s to length. Depending on the size of your skate box and the manual pad, unless you're not adding coping to your manual pad, you may need an angle grinder since the coping only comes in 4-foot and 6-foot sections. Other items you may need are a countersink drill bit specific for metal to countersink the holes in the coping as well as the masonite. I also use a 2-inch hole saw bit to make handles on the sides of the manual pads to make it easier to carry since I'll be moving these boxes around by myself a lot of the time. I actually use a jigsaw to clean up the lines for the handles, but you could definitely use a handsaw if it's small enough. Lastly, you'll need a measuring tape and a pen or a pencil. So there's a chance you may have never used or even seen a rafter square before, but it's a very simple tool to use. You first mark down how long you want your 2x4 to be, you butt the rafter square against the wood to make a straight line, and then you actually use the rafter square as a guide for your circular saw to make sure you make a straight cut. I use my hand here, but if you're not comfortable doing that, you can use a clamp, but it will take a little bit longer. But I find this to be one of the fastest and easiest ways to cut 2x4s without having to use a miter saw. So one of the things that I didn't like about my previous box was because of the way I built the legs, it required me to move my front seat up a little bit more than I would like. So in this build, I'm actually going to taper the ends of the box so that I have a little bit more room to move my seat back, but still keep the same overall length. And here I'm loading up all my tools that I'm gonna need to pick up the plywood and 2x4s and stuff. So you're gonna wanna get 3/4 of an inch thick plywood for the sides, or 23/32, and you're gonna wanna get 1/2 inch thick for the top, or 15/32. So I'm only buying 2 sheets of plywood, one that's 1/2 inch and one that's 3/4 of an inch. If you're gonna build this from scratch, you're gonna need one additional sheet of the 1/2 inch. I already have a skate box, so I'm gonna reuse the top from that skate box for this build. But if you're gonna build from scratch, you're gonna need 3 sheets total, 2 1/2 inch and one that's 3/4. And then a good number of 2x4s. The amount's gonna depend on your length and the spacing. So you do the math for that, buy extra and then return it if you don't know how much, but drawing it up ahead of time will definitely save you some time. So you're gonna need 2 different size screws, 1 1/4 inch screws for the top and 2 1/2 inch screws for the sides. So I'm not gonna pick it up right now, but I'm gonna have to come back later and pick up this masonite. It's 1 1/8 inch sheet. So I'm gonna cut it in this parking lot of the Home Depot. Home Depot usually offers to cut it for you, but unfortunately the saw here is out of order, so I kind of have no choice but to cut it here. If you are gonna cut it in the parking lot, just be courteous, clean up after yourself, bring a vacuum or a broom. So I started with cutting the sides for the manual pad. Mine's going to be about 8 inches tall and 4 feet long, and it's going to make up of 2 small boxes that can be screwed in together to make one longer box. If you are going to cut it like I am here, make sure your platform is close enough together so that your plywood doesn't sag and potentially pinch your blade. So I forgot to bring my square, which would have been useful here since I need to cut this 5-foot long section and my straight edge here is only 4 feet. But a nice little trick you can do is put your straight edge against the edge of this plywood, make it as flush as possible, and then measure about 2 feet from this corner to here and 2 feet from here to there. And then make a straight line with your straight edge from there, and then this will be your third point of reference. So I measure about 16 inches here, then measure yourself 16 inches from here, then you put the straight edge on that side and measure from that point to here, and you should get a pretty straight line to cut. So yeah, this is how you would have your line set up. Third point of reference here, and then line it up on that end. It should be pretty square, or as square as you can be. Cut that little piece off. Now it's small enough to fit in the car. Finish the rest of this in the garage. Now I gotta cut the 1/2-inch plywood. Just gonna cut it down to 4 feet down the middle and then 3 feet down the side just so it can fit in the car. I cut up all the other pieces with a circular saw, just enough so that I can fit in the car. Some of them cut to the size, some of them oversized, since I don't know what's the final size of the manual pad. So now we're on to put it together, cut some more. So I decided to trim down the sides for the skate box. I initially had it cut at about 16 inches, but once you account for the thickness of the plywood and the sheet of masonite that goes on top, it would have had a final height of about 17 inches. And I wanted my skate box somewhere between the height of a bench and the height of a manual pad. So I cut my sides to about 14 inches so that it would have a final height of about 15 inches. So in my original design, I had planned on starting the taper at the very top of the box, but I ended up starting it about 3.5 inches from the top to account for the depth of the 2x4 that gets installed at the ends of the box. So this is more as an FYI, since you're going to see these strips of wood later in the video, but I end up removing them since the size of the box is more than strong enough and it doesn't need these front and end panels, to be honest. So you can just disregard this portion of the build and just build the box without any front and end support. So after cutting the sides for the skate box, it still felt a little bit heavy, so I decided to take out some material on the middle sections of the sides to make it lighter, as well as kind of give it a bench kind of look. I did most of the cuts with a circular saw, and then I cleaned up the corners with a jigsaw, but you can easily do this with a hand saw if you don't have a jigsaw on you. So since I didn't provide any footage of me actually putting the boxes together, since it would have made the video much longer than it already is, I'd figure at least give you some tips of how to install plywood and 2x4s together. So when drilling into plywood and 2x4s, always stay at least an inch away from the edge to prevent splitting of the wood. And the same applies to the other edge of the 2x4. And you repeat that for all the 2x4s you have inside the box. And same applies to the plywood top. Always stay at least an inch away. And always make sure you're drilling into 2x4s, because if you're drilling into nothing, it's not helping you in any way. It's just going to create a hazard inside. So always aim for the 2x4s. The coping, or the angle iron that you're going to use, just remember to drill your holes for the angle iron in places where it's a lot thicker. For example, I should have, since I'm using old coping, this already had this hole, but if I were to do a new coping, I would try to get around here so I can hit more wood, because now if I use this right here, it's going to split the wood on the side, so I need like a piece of wood that I need to drill here to act as more material so that it can lock in better. So it's not a lot, it's a little extra work, but
not that bad. Just keep that in mind. So you can see I added some little extra blocks on the sides so the coping can catch. Hoping to get into more material. So this is the box after everything. It is noticeably lighter. Actually, it's stable without the slats. So you might not even need these slats, but I'll hold on to them for now just in case it needs to, but just jumping on it, I don't think it needs any additional support. I'll keep these here for now, but I'll let you know if I end up needing to put those back in, but I don't think we do. So I decided to add the extra brace here where the slots used to be, just to make it a little more sturdier here. There was a tiny bit of a wobble when it was skated, so I think adding these braces, additional braces here and there, will make a difference. So I want to show you how I lock the boxes in place. Put them in front of each other and push them in, and then you put 3 screws in through here. But let me show you how they actually lock into place. So if I leave a little bit of space here for this plywood to lock underneath here, so that when you put 3 screws in, use 2.5-inch screws, it's going to go through this masonite into this plywood into this 2x4.
One last tip I forgot to include: if you are going to make the manual pads like I have here, make sure the drill that you're using is set at the slowest speed so that you don't accidentally tear through your masonite when you're drilling the boxes together. While this dolly that I picked up at Home Depot for 20 bucks can definitely do the job, sometimes the slightest crack in the sidewalk can stop it in its tracks, especially if you're moving it by yourself. So if you are able to, I would definitely recommend investing in a slightly better quality dolly with bigger wheels. I actually found this dolly on the side of the street one day, and the quality is so much better. The wheels are much bigger, I believe 4 inches tall, and the material the wheels are made of are much better quality rubber. It might even be polyurethane. If I could find it online, I'll definitely link it in the description, but I definitely recommend getting a dolly that has wheels that are at least 4 inches tall.
So one additional feature I've added to the box was I added these strips of wood that I've had from a separate project, and I've drilled them at the ends of the box to basically protect the edges of the plywood from getting chipped, because you know you're always going to bang your truck against this one every once in a while, and you will eventually end up damaging the plywood that's underneath the masonite. So I've already gone through a few of these. There are probably other ways to protect it. I've also tried with masonite, but even here you can see it's already starting to chip. So I'm going to try it again with masonite and duct tape to maybe keep it all in one piece. But if that doesn't work, I might just go to Home Depot and pick up like a strip of aluminum, because that will never get damaged, but it will cost you like 10 bucks to protect one box. So just think about that. You should get some sort of protection so you don't have to replace your plywood sooner.
I added grip tape to the feet of the skate box, since sometimes if you're really aggressive on the box, it can shift a little bit over time. It's not noticeable when you're skating it, but it does move. So by adding grip tape, it should help keep the box a little bit more locked into the ground. So here I'm actually using my bumper protector and a tarp to help me load the skate box into the car, which is something you should also think about so that you don't accidentally scratch your car when you're loading and unloading the skate box and manual pads, whether it's a tarp or a padded blanket or something of that sort. And here I'm also loading in the manual pads. It's a bit of a snug fit, but it does fit, and there's actually enough space between the manual pads for me to store the dolly and skateboard. So here is where you can actually see why I wanted to taper the ends of the skate box. I can actually keep the original length of the skate box on top, but the legs themselves take up less space than they used to. And now I can push my seat back to have a little bit more leg room. And here you can see how the taper helps the box stay a little bit further away from the door of the hatchback. And actually the legs from my previous box would sometimes rub against the door of the hatchback. So doing these tapers was definitely a good design decision. Since I'm storing the manual pads within the skate box and the manual pads are going to overlap each other like you see here in order to take up as little space as possible, I had to make sure the inside width of the skate box was at least as wide as the total width of one manual pad plus the thickness of one of the plywood walls from the other manual pad. So this was a fun experience for me, as this is my first time making a video that was this long. I didn't expect it to be this long, but I wanted this video to show that almost anyone can build this as long as you know how to use a saw and a drill. And you don't even need a lot of space to actually store it, as long as you design and build it the right way. Hell, you don't even need a car to do this. If you're within walking distance from a decent sized skate spot and you got a good quality dolly with a second pair of hands, you can do this with no problem. You probably haven't seen it, but there's a few clips of me on my channel that were uploaded over a decade ago of me skating some boxes and ramps and stuff, and I also built those as well. And it feels great to be able to serve the local skaters in my neighborhood all over again, especially with the newer generation who, don't have easy access to get to the local skate park that's a couple miles away. And while I can't skate as much as I used to, I try to bring the boxes out whenever I can skate, even if it's for a couple hours in the day, for at least 1 or 2 days a week. So it's been a few weeks now since I started bringing these boxes to my local skate spot, and the boxes have been holding up well. The only issues that I've had are that coping that I've used for the skate box sometimes needs to be re-waxed every 20 minutes or so. I don't know if I'm just using the wrong kind of wax, or maybe the steel just needs to be broken into. And I made the mistake of letting my boxes get wet one time, which resulted in the surface of the masonite swelling up a little bit. So when you ride on the boxes, it feels a little soft when you skate it. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope at least one of my tips or design decisions were useful to you in any way. And let me know if you have any questions down below, or if you have any comments or recommendations, or because I'm sure there was probably better ways for me to build this. And yeah, if you need any clarifications, because I had to correct myself a few times in the video if you didn't notice. So thanks again, and take care.